Hi, my name is Linda Lovisa, and thank you for joining. Today we're going to be using palette knives, and I am going to do this lovely scene. So as you can see, I have laid out a selection of palette knives here. Palette knives are as varied as paintbrushes, and today I'm going to be demonstrating this lovely scene that I took in the Shuswap. And the Shuswap is located in BC, and it's a great area for viewing salmon. On this particular day, we didn't catch the salmon. We were just a little bit too early. But let's show you a completely different way of using your paint with palette knives. And this painting is going to be completely done with knives. Some people like to use brushes and knives together. When I decide to do a palette knife painting, I want it to be truly a palette knife painting. So I'm going to gather up these knives. Here we go. And I'm going to set them over here so that they're easy for me to reach. And I'm once again going to set my timer for 20 minutes. Let's see what happens in 20 minutes. Okay, so what I've done is I've given my canvas a tonal wash with a magenta, which is an unusual color for me to use, but I just thought there's lots of purpley blues in this scene, so magenta is a perfect underpainting color for this scene. And I've chalked out my landscape. So one of the things that a trick that I like to use is just having a piece of Conte chalk. And once your tonal wash is dry, then you can just kind of draw out just like you would if you were sketching. And then that way, you know, it saves a little bit of time when you go to start to paint. I like to do that, especially when I'm using knives, because I'm depositing a lot of color, so anything that's underneath is not going to show up. But let's get started. Okay, so here are my knives. And now I'm just going to use a medium-sized knife to start off with. And I should have cleaned it off perhaps a little bit better, but you know what? I do use my knives quite often. So I'm going to pick up the titanium white to start off with, and notice how I'm positioning my knife. It is pulling down and up towards me, okay? And because this is a freshly laid palette, my knife is a little bit, my paint is a little bit more fluid than normal, but here we go. Now you can see I've got a really nice amount of paint on there. Now what you don't want to do, is you don't want to pick up the paint like a spoon, okay? You always pick it up from the back side, all right? Because then it's a lot easier to deposit onto your canvas, as you can see. So now that is a really nice amount of paint, but you know what? It's a little bit too fluid. I could add gel medium to it, but what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to use straight paint. Because what I like about using straight paint is everything dries at the same time, like the same time frame. So look what I'm doing. Haha. Yeah, so you don't even really have to put the paint from your palette. You can put it right directly on your canvas, depending on what you're doing. Now I've got a nice amount of paint to work with. So let's get that moved along. Now it's kind of like icing a cake. If you like baking, you're going to like painting with palette knives. And let's get that moving in there. Look at that. That's so wonderful. It's such a great feeling to be able to put a beautiful amount of paint on your canvas. There we go. Let's move that along. And I'm bringing it down. And notice how I'm using my knife. I'm using it on a slight angle, and I'm bringing it down to the tree line that I've got established there. I can actually bring it down a little bit lower. Now the idea with palette knife painting is that you want to see the stroke work. So if you're finding that you're thinning it out too much, then it's, you know, it's still palette knife painting, but the whole idea is to have some texture. So let's put a little bit more paint on here. Believe it or not, I need more paint. So let's get that white out again. And just like I normally do when I'm doing skies and such, I always start with the white, then add the blue. So I'm just going to add some white here. And look at that heavy body paint. Notice how it's not dripping down on my canvas. It's just going to stay put. And the paint that I'm using is by TriArt, which is a Canadian brand. And I really do love their paint. And let's pull it down. Now you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, you went right over where that mountain is. Yeah, I did that on purpose, by the way. So when I come to the edge, I always give it a little bit of a trim, and that way it's not going to be a nuisance when you go to frame your painting. There we go, pull that down. And this is where our trees are and so on. Now, while I'm pulling that down here, I'm also going to give it a little bit of a texture here. Once again, whoops, I might as well just use what I have on my palette here. See how I picked that up? And I'm just going to pull it down. The reason why I did that is because, well, it's hard, maybe it's hard to tell here, but there's water here and it's reflecting from above. So whatever is reflecting up here as far as color combinations go, you want to be able to integrate that down here at the same time. So let's get that beautiful blue sky in there. So I am going to use cobalt blue, and look at that. Oh, that's so amazing. Cerulean blue, whoops, my knife is a little bit slippery. Cerulean blue. So now I've got two blues up here, cobalt blue and cerulean blue, and now I'm going to move that paint around. Oh, this is such fun. Here we go. I really do love palette knife painting. It's just very freeing. Really, anything detailed is limited because you're using knives, and I do have smaller knives. Now, I want you to notice something. See, I have this beautiful cloud in here, and notice how I'm just going around that cloud because I've already got the white paint here. So as my painting develops, I'll add some shadows to those clouds. But notice how all of a sudden I've got a cloud. And now this swooping sort of atmospheric swish in the sky here. Notice how I've placed my knife quite flat. So I'm just going to do a stroke and another stroke over here, and just continue that down and continue it across. And the more I stroke, the more I'm going to get a soft blend. And the key thing here is you want to make sure that you're using a very light touch. Otherwise, you're going to peel the paint off your canvas. So I'm bringing in more of those light strokes in here. Pulling it up. And notice how now I'm moving upward into that cloud area because this is the mountain area. But notice how I continued that stroke down. There's a reason for that. Because if I would have stopped where the mountain was, then I'm going to end up with a halo or an edge. And I don't really want that. So now let's bring that up to the size of the cloud that's up in the sky there. And slowly pull the paint up. And now I'm going to offload some of that paint into my water, just like that. There we go. Very light touch. And just pulling it down gently. And just going to move this up a little bit. Now, let's get that mountain in there. So I'm going to use cobalt blue. I've added it to the edge. And I'm going to just tap it on. And now I'm going to pick up, I have the magenta on my palette because I did the tonal wash with the magenta. So I'm going to add a little bit of magenta to that. just a very small amount. And notice how it's all on the edge of my knife, and as I work, it gets moved around. And look at the other side of my knife. I know it's hard to tell because this knife had paint on it to start off with, but it's nice and clean. Let's get that mountain in. And you're probably thinking, oh, whoa, that's way too much. Remember, you're blending. Now, some painters, of course, blend the color on their palette and then pick the color up and move it to their canvas. But why do that when you can do the blending right here? It's really building your confidence into mixing paint direct. And that is one of the things that I just absolutely love. And here we go, just bringing it over and a little bit more blue. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that cobalt blue, and not enough there. So very small amount on my edge, and I'm just going to tap it in like so and move that around. Oh, isn't that pretty? There we go. Now I'm going to bring a little bit of that color down. Just a moment here. I'm just going to do a couple more strokes. So the idea is to try not to overblend. You want that texture to be there. Now I don't have it quite as dark as my photo shows, but that is because when you're taking a photograph and you've got something off in the distance, it often is a little bit, reproduces a little bit darker than usual. So notice how I offloaded my brush, my knife. I just went to the edge, slight angle, and now I've cleared the paint from here, and now I can move it around on here. So there's no waste. There we go. Orca wants some attention, so here we go. Now, I'm going to pull that down. And let's bring in a little bit of that over here. Just as a bit of a shadow area there. So now I've cleared off my knife. So once I'm done clearing off my knife, sometimes what I'll do is I have a cloth here, and I'll just, whatever's left on there, I'll just remove it. So let's get some of this other area in here. And I'm going to use the ultramarine blue. I'm going to deposit more of the ultramarine blue over here and down here. Now remember earlier I mapped this out a little bit, so I know where my green areas are. Now I'm going to pick up the yellow deep. So notice when I picked up the yellow deep, I flipped my knife and went to a different edge. And now I'm going to deposit that. I mean the yellow on the other edge. Getting things mixed up here. Okay, so let's pick that up again. A little bit more. Okay, so once again, you're going to do the blending here. And it's not going to be the correct value to start off with. And that's okay, because what you're doing is you're also going to use the same principles as you normally use with your paintbrushes, and you're going to add the lights later. And pulling that up, and look at that, how it starts to happen. And pull it across. Now again, just like my other videos, I'm showing you the steps when you are just beginning. And there we go, pull that up. And there we go. Pull that up there and pull it down. Now look how easily those trees just started to appear. So that was the ultramarine blue first, the yellow deep was a second pickup, and now of course I need to pick up more to create more greens here. So here's the ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to dab it there, and I'm just going to do this over here. And one moment, because my dog wants to go out. Okay, back to my painting. So picking up the yellow, like I did before, and there we go, bringing that yellow in. Pull that up a little bit. And just offload a little bit here. And I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow here. So now I'm going to pick, that was the yellow deep, by the way, that I picked up. So now I'm picking up the yellow medium. And I'm going to hit these tops here. I'm not going to blend it just yet. I'm just going to bring this down here. Offload my knife. See how I did that on the edge? It's a great way to do it. Now let's get some of these banks in here. So I'm going to use the yellow Arlide, or Arlide yellow deep. I'm just going to pull that down and bring that over here as well. And bring that across. Like so. Now it's a little thinner here, but that's okay because I'm just basically blocking in and underpainting. Just going to pull this down a little bit more. It's got enough paint there to pull it down a little bit more, which is great. And I'm also going to pull some of that into this water. A little bit more paint on my knife, and pick up some of this as well. And I'm just going to bring that down as part of the reflection. Now it's not going to quite look like a reflection at the moment, but it will. Now, bring that down. Okay, so let's pick up some of the parchment white, the unbleached white. There we go, it's on the edge of my knife. I'm going to deposit a nice thick deposit. Come right up to that edge. And now I'm starting to get into some smaller spaces. So this is where I need to switch to a smaller knife because this knife is too big now. So I'm just going to offload it here. And that's why you have different size knives. And I'm just going to set that one aside. And let's get a small knife here. Which one's my favorite? Now, you'll also notice that some knives have different flexibility. Like this one is really nice and flexible versus this one here. I have to really put a lot of pressure on it. So I want this really nice flexible one right now. See that? Okay. So let's get some of that shoreline in. There we go. Now I'm probably going to go into a little bit more time today because I would like to get this covered for you. And I'm adding some warm white to my knife. So notice it's a nice small knife, but there's quite a bit of paint on there still. So I'm going to start to pull the warm white in. I'm going to bring it down. And the warm white versus the titanium white is in the mixture. It just gives me a little bit warmer result. than the titanium white would. And it's adding a really nice color blend here. I'm going to grab another small knife. Well, just like my paintbrushes, I like to work with multiple knives too. And let's bring that up and back. And let's give that a splash of blue here, where the river continues. A little bit more paint. Just going to pull it across there. There we go. And just going to bring a little bit more of that blue in here. More blue. This is the cerulean blue that I'm using. And notice I'm doing a fairly good amount of paint again. And let's get this edge here. Bring in a nice amount of paint in here and over here as well. There we go. And let's bring that over here. More paint. And that's the unbleached white. Pulling it across. Pulling the paint across, and let's thin that out. See how I'm doing that? It's really nice and easy to make an adjustment. And I need another knife, loaded with blue and yellow. And I'm just gonna hit that across there and pull that up a little bit. And let's pick up some more of the yellow medium and let's lighten this area here. So notice how I've changed the position of my knife, and I'm doing a vertical stroke and using the full flat surface to bring in those trees. As I mentioned earlier, this was during the salmon run, and so fall was really just in the air. So some of the trees have started to change a little bit. So there were some trees that had some fall colors, which is so pretty to see. And there we go. Notice how I did this edge here. I laid my knife down and over, and let's pull that over. There we go. Easy as that. And now this point comes right out, and then there was an area that was really narrow. So I'm just going to do that and then pull across. And let's get that pulled across there. And I'm going to pull down a little bit. And take some of this color over here and bring it over here. And I might have to add more paint. Okay, so now I'm going to pull into it, and notice how now it's starting to have that reflective quality. Let's get some more paint down here. Here we go. Not that one. Where is it? There it is. All right. So this is a flat brush, and it's got a completely different shape to it. So I'm going to use this. It's not a brush, it's a knife. And I'm going to use it and bring it in here. So here we go. It's all loaded. and I'm going to pull it down. Now I am obviously going over my 20 minutes, but that's okay, as long as you're okay with it. And nobody can respond, but you can respond by leaving me a message if you find that, you know, that the length of time that I'm demonstrating for you needs to be adjusted. I'm happy to hear from you. And now I'm pulling down, so this is water as well. Now this is really the beginning steps of this palette knife painting. And so once I get that first initial, I guess, block in, it's still a block in, even though I'm using a lot of paint, then I wait for it to dry. And with a palette knife painting, you cannot go, well, you can, but you risk lifting the paint off your canvas if you go in and it's not dry. So I always wait a good 24 hours before I go back into the painting. Now, if you're using gel mediums, which a lot of people do, really make sure that it's nice and dry when you go back into it, because sometimes the gel mediums will make some areas dry a little quicker, but then it also makes other areas dry a little slower. So you want to make sure that those areas are nice and dry. And whatever textures that you're putting on your canvas when you're in your initial stroke work, I usually like to recommend that you think about what it is that you're interpreting, because those strokes, unless you're taking some sandpaper to it, will not go away. You're adding to your painting, and you're adding on top of the strokes that you've already established. So I'm just cutting into this area here with this knife. Oops, wrong color. Let's get some more blue on there. Notice I didn't panic. There we go. And if there's an area that you really hate, and you're worried about that, that area, you can just take your knife and scratch it off. So it's pretty, forgiving. So I'm giving this area here a little bit more stroke, suggesting water here. Pulling that back. And let's bring in here in the front. I'm using the red and the blue double loaded on my knife along with the yellow. So my knife is triple loaded now. And just going to swish that around in here. And look at that beautiful gray that I've got. And bring that in here. Pull that down a little bit more. So that's the blue, the red, and the yellow on my knife. And let's move it around. So there's a whole bunch of rocks along this area here, and so there's a lot of work to do yet. So what I do like about palette knife too is when you're doing tree branches, you know how you have to use a really thin brush with really, hardly any, like, what are they called, liner brushes. With a knife, you can just carve into things and to make branches appear. And it pulls the paint from one area to another. Isn't that cool? That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Now that you've seen what I've done today with this piece, if you would like to learn more and subscribe to my videos, and don't forget to hit the notification button, that's important too, because that way, anytime I have a new video out, you will receive it. And I hope you enjoyed today. Bye for now.